So we'll begin the workshop with a presentation from Mila's founder and scientific director, Yoshua Bengio. Professor Bengio is also full professor at Université de Montréal and acts as scientific director of IVADO. He received a Turing Award for his work in deep learning and is the computer scientist with highest H index. He is a fellow of both the Royal Society of London and Canada, Knight of the Legion of Honor of France, Officer of the Order of Canada, member of the UN Scientific Advisory Board for independent advice on breakthroughs in science and technology since 2023. He is also a Canada CFAR chair and chairs the International Scientific Report on the Safety of Advanced AI. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to Professor Bengio. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for all the work you're putting into this workshop. It's a very difficult and important topic. In my little presentation this morning, I'll say a few words about Mila, but then I'll discuss a hypothetical situation which worries me a lot, which is in terms of the impact on society, but mostly on the geopolitical and military and sort of political issues. What would happen if or when we reach human level AI or AGI or even beyond, which is called ASI for artificial superintelligence. So Mila, just a few words. There's 120 professors. About half of them are sort of called core and have offices or full access here. Others are associate, and among those, in total, about 50 research chairs have been awarded. So there's a lot of research going on here. More than 1,200 grad students, more than 140 employees. Mila is my baby, and I'm very proud of it. The beating heart of the AI ecosystem in Montreal. In terms of its mission, there's 4 pillars. Research in machine learning at the highest level, both theoretical and applied. Of course, with all these grad students, a central role in training researchers. We also have a large team who is working with companies here in Montreal to facilitate AI adoption in Canada. And finally, we have a mission to go beyond our research objectives and connect with the rest of society on questions of responsible AI. And this workshop is an example of the things we do. We also have a number of professors who are in the social sciences and humanities and a lot of activities working with international organizations and so on. Okay, so before I start talking about AGI, let me remind you of the precautionary principle, taking the definition from Wikipedia. It's an approach to innovations which have potential for causing harm. When the extensive scientific knowledge on the matter is lacking. In other words, what do we do when we're not sure what the outcomes could be in terms of harm to humans? And so in this context, the principle emphasizes caution, pausing and review before leaping into new innovations that may prove disastrous. The other piece of information that is important to think about the scenario where we could get to human level in many areas is just the trends. So the capabilities of AI are on the rise as well as its deployment throughout society. Between 2018 and today, in average, on a per year basis, training compute quadrupled, times 4 per year. That's the amount of compute that is increasing. The efficiency of using data, which is the main thing people in machine learning care about, improved by 30% per year. In other words, we're improving the algorithms and they generalize better and need less data every year. The algorithmic efficiency, so how efficient in terms of computation these algorithms are, triples per year. And the investments are rising very, very fast, and the average over this period is 100 billion per year, increasing by 30% every year. So, you know, you can also see curves like these where we see benchmarks, machine learning benchmarks over the last decade, well, actually 2 decades, over many capabilities. The more recent ones are things like language understanding and math and science, and the dark line is human level performance. So you can see that there's a trend towards approaching, and for the earlier benchmarks, going beyond human level performance. Okay. And in particular, as I think we all recognize, the progress in language has been amazing. People, you know, debate this, but for the most part, we can say that AI now masters language. This was a turning point anticipated by one of the founders of computer science, Alan Turing. He wrote a lot of interesting things, actually, but when he was thinking about, you know, will AI or computers reach human level one day, he was concerned that we may not find a way to control AI systems that would be smarter than us, which is a reasonable thing to consider. The bad news is, with all these trends, unfortunately, AI researchers still don't know how they could control AI systems that would be smarter than us. That being said, there's still a gap between current systems and human abilities, especially in terms of reasoning, although on that part we are seeing a lot of progress this year. But maybe more importantly, for some of the dangers that I'll talk about, and also many military applications, there's still a significant gap in terms of planning and thus autonomy. That being said, there's a huge commercial pressure to push forward in industry with you know, these capabilities. If you sum all the investments in AI over the last decade, we are approaching the $1 trillion. And you think that's a lot of money? It's not, actually, because there are estimates that just reaching human level AI would have a net present value, an economic value of $10 quadrillion. So a quadrillion is 1,000 trillion, so, you know, 1 in 10,000 parts is a small investment, very small one. Of course, we don't know how much time it's going to take, but still. Yeah, so it's hard to know when AGI will come. It could be, according to some of the people working in the AI labs, as short as a few years. If you look at polls of machine learning researchers, you know, they think more, you know, maybe the end of this decade or the next one, but no one really knows. There are people who think that maybe the advances in AI are stalled. Maybe, maybe not. But if you think about the geopolitics, the public policy, and the human rights perspective, I think that you have to think, okay, so what about the scenario where it continues moving forward? How do we make sure we don't get into big trouble? It's easy for us right now to kind of digest the fact that AI beats humans at games that are, you know, considered intellectual, like chess or Go. It's a little bit harder to really digest the fact that right now, O1, one of the OpenAI systems, is scoring among the top 500 math grad students in math exams, and many other metrics. One that I'm particularly worried about is the advances in software engineering, where on a quantile kind of evaluation of various tasks, Anthropic's model went from 3% at the beginning of this year to 49%. Basically, it's like right now in the middle of the pack of software engineering abilities in terms of humans. So I think if you extend these, of course we don't know, we have to at least think, you know, what would happen if future advances will bring us to human level or above on many more intellectual tasks. I'm chairing a report, an international scientific report on the safety of advanced AI. We had an interim version that was published last May, and we'll have another longer version in February in Paris for the AI Action Summit. And some of the information you find there, it's like 150 pages. It's like a lot of stuff, but it's a survey, a scientific survey of the literature in AI safety, covering the diversity of views that exist in the AI community. Quoting, as general purpose AI capabilities continue to advance, risks such as large-scale labor market impacts, AI-enabled hacking or biological attacks, and society losing control over general purpose AI could emerge, although the likelihood of these scenarios is debated among researchers. Okay, so I think it's fairly easy to think. My watch says 9 minutes 40 seconds. It's easy to think about achieving human level. What about superhuman? There's no reason to think that human intelligence is the pinnacle. But there's a scenario that researchers are considering that could explain how, once we get to human level in one particular ability, that is in machine learning research, there could be an acceleration of the advances, right? Once you train one of these systems, like say GPT-5, if you use the same GPUs that were used to train it, you get maybe 100,000 equivalent people with those skills. So that would boost the speed of research in machine learning quite rapidly at that point. That was a recent poll from about 3,000 researchers publishing in main AI venues, and between 40 and 50% of them gave at least a 10% chance to advanced AI leading to outcomes as bad as human extinction. That's a lot. Okay, so let's try to focus a bit on the impact. You have to understand that knowledge and intelligence give power to whoever controls them. And so a major political and ethical question is, who decides what the AI is going to be used for? What are the goals that we give to these machines? And depending on those goals, we can get very good outcomes or very bad outcomes. The other correlate of this is, how does that relate to the fundamentals of democracy? Democracy is about sharing power. That's what it should be. But if we build machines that are much smarter than us, whoever controls them will have extremely concentrated power. And how can that be compatible with democracy, right? When we reach human level or beyond, such AIs may be used to design powerful new weapons in particular that could destabilize geopolitics and global security. So that's the misuse case, but there's another case which is losing control of AI systems that are smarter than us. You have to realize that there's a particular kind of goal, several kinds, but one that I like to think about, which is self-preservation. If a superhuman AI has a self-preservation goal, that means it doesn't want to be turned off. That means its actions will be, in conflict with our own objectives. And if we're not able to turn it off because it can copy itself on the internet, it could manipulate us, it could do all kinds of things, then we're in real trouble. So you might wonder, how such a goal of self-preservation emerge? Well, there are two ways. One, some crazy humans who actually exist and said they would do it would be happy to see humanity replaced by super intelligent AIs. So that's a serious problem. And the other is, right now, we have examples of how systems that are trained by reinforcement learning could develop such a self-preservation goal. These are called things like reward hacking and tempering that I won't have time to explain. Okay. So what can we do? Well, there are at least two kinds of challenges here. One is we need to design AI that will not blow in our face. That's a scientific problem, the so-called alignment and control problems. And there's a political problem, right? How do we make sure that whatever we build is not going to be used in ways that threaten democracy and geopolitical stability? So I said a few words about democracy, but let me add a little bit. Like, even if we made sufficient advances on the scientific side to be able to design AI that essentially does what the operators ask the AI to do, even if we put guardrails, like, code that prevents the AI from doing bad things that go against our laws or moral principles, all of these could be removed by whoever controls these systems. And so, in particular, powerful military, surveillance, and disinformation AI technology would greatly help authoritarian regimes. And in fact, it could even help creating authoritarian regimes from within democracies. So, what can we do? At the level of the competition between companies, there's an unhealthy race, but it could be tamed by regulation. How about the competition between countries, for example, between the US and China? So the only way to create a coordination between countries is international agreements and treaties. That may, in principle, break the vicious cycle of an AGI arms race, maybe on the model of some other weapons that have threatened us in the past, like nuclear weapons. For now, there isn't much in terms of military agreements. Most of the agreements that currently exist cover the civilian use of AI. There was a recent agreement, non-binding agreement regarding the military use, but it didn't include China. And of course, it's non-binding. But it's a start. But we have to ask ourselves, what would motivate countries like US and China to let go some sovereignty and sign such a constraint on what they do with AI? Human rights activism would be useful, but not sufficient. It's not going to really influence, if we go into streets here, that's not going to have much influence on the Chinese government. And it's not even clear that it would have influence on the Western governments. So as far as I see it, the only factor that can make these governments agree to go into treaty mode is the fear of loss of human control to rogue AIs where, the whole of humanity is threatened. So, we need to make sure that AI, especially the most powerful forms that will be built in the future, are governed by a democratic process that is also multilateral, in other words, involving multiple countries, to make sure that no single person, no single corporation, no single government can abuse that power. In fact, the best thing would be that if we really want to build these kind of dangerous systems, which I think we should be very careful with, we should do it jointly across many countries and nations, especially those that are leading, like China and the US. One question is, how would two countries that see themselves as adversaries trust each other? There has been recent work on what's called hardware-enabled governance. We could modify the chips that go into high-end AI systems so that they can enforce some rules, for example, about the size of training runs and things like that. Okay, so I just want to finish by saying that AI does not happen to us. We are the generation who will determine its future. We have agency now, and we should use it. In particular, not all AI systems are equally dangerous, both in terms of loss of control and dangerous misuse. Narrow or non-agentic AI could be used to accelerate scientific research, bring all the things that people are claiming AI will bring us, like advances in medicine, and be much less dangerous from a geopolitical and loss of control point of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yoshua. Do we have any questions in the room? So if people have questions in the room, you can go towards the mics. We have one over there and over there. And while, people in the room.
I'll be also on the panel, so if people want to ask questions there, it's okay.
Yeah, I will ask just the one question online, which we got during your talk. It is a question from Paul Mallet. And the question is control and realistic objective? Are we not progressing from a transactional to relational relationships with AI, especially with emerging autonomous AI?
Okay, is control a realistic objective? I think that if we go to non-agentic systems, it's a very realistic objective. It's not what people are doing right now. I don't think that we should have a relationship with AI that's similar to the relationship we have with other entities that are, agents like humans. I think that would be a big mistake. There will be a temptation to build AI that are like human-like and interact with us like humans. I think it's a very dangerous slope in terms of the dangers that come with agency that we would, give to these systems.
Thank you. And let's take one question from the room.
Northwest National Laboratory.
The microphone is not working. Okay, try again.
I'm Aaron Lutman from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in the US. Do you worry when you say that AI development needs to be governed by a democratic process, that you might immediately lose countries where democracy is not a core value?
So in countries that are democratic, we can do that. And, there's going to be a different level of coordination. There's a level between countries who share a lot of values. And that would already be useful because of, avoiding the potential trap of self-coup and, a government taking advantage of AI for its own political objectives. But we also need to coordinate with China and potentially Russia and so on, and non-democratic countries that might be tempted to use AI against civilians and or our infrastructure, for example. And so these are two different things, right? So we need to agree with these countries about, what can be done, what is a red line, and also the process by which we can verify each other's compliance to these treaties.
Thank you. Thank you again, Yoshua. Let's give another round of applause to Yoshua.